Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining today. I'm excited to walk you through a conversation that's become central to how we think about modern infrastructure and delivery. At the heart of this talk is a simple but challenging idea. In DevOps, how do we go fast and stay in control? This isn't just theory, it's a real operational tension. Move too fast and things break. Over-engineer control and teams grind to a halt. But the top performing teams in our research show us it doesn't have to be a trade-off. Let's dig into how they do it. Let's start with an analogy, Formula One racing. It might seem far from infrastructure automation, but bear with me. F1 is a world where performance is pushed to the limit. Every millisecond counts. And just like in DevOps, success depends on a mix of high-performance machines, real-time data, and flawless coordination between people. What we'll see is that the principles that guide success on the track, like balance, discipline, and speed with safety, apply almost perfectly to how great DevOps teams operate. Now, back in the 1950s, F1 cars were all about raw speed. They could hit 180 miles per hour, but look at the average race speeds, just 64.6 miles per hour. Why? Because without modern controls, no telemetry, poor safety, limited pit strategy, teams couldn't sustain that top speed. The result? Crashes, inefficiencies, and unpredictability. And that's very similar to early-stage DevOps setups. Fast pipelines, cool tools, but brittle processes. It's speed without guardrails. By the 1970s and 80s, F1 began to evolve. New safety measures, smarter strategy, and emerging data systems changed everything. Drivers were still going fast, 220 mph even, but now with much better average lap times and 3 times fewer fatalities. So what's the lesson here? The introduction of structure and control didn't slow things down. It made them more consistent, safer, and ultimately faster. This is where most DevOps teams find themselves today, trying to strike the right balance. If you go all in on speed, skipping tests, ignoring approvals, you end up with instability and burnout. But if you pile on process and slow everything to a crawl, developers disengage. Winning teams manage to create systems where developers move quickly, but within trusted automated guardrails. That's the balance that leads to real success. In Formula One, the driver gets the spotlight, but they don't win races alone. The pit crew, the race engineers, the strategist, all of them are operating in lockstep, shaving off seconds here and there. One bad tire change, one missed signal, and the whole thing can fall apart. So F1 shows us that speed without tight coordination isn't enough. Everyone needs to know their role, communicate clearly, and perform with precision. And this maps perfectly to DevOps. The developer may push the code, but it's the DevOps engineers, the SREs, the platform leads, all working together that make delivery safe and fast. When each team understands their role and automation helps stitch everything together, you get that same harmony we see in top racing teams. This level of coordination is what drives real performance in infrastructure delivery. When we looked at the highest performing teams in our study, they all had one thing in common. They didn't settle for a trade-off. They embraced both speed and control. Not by accident, but through design. They invested in platforms, standardized workflows, automated policies, and developer self-service. This allowed them to move fast without creating chaos. A balance that's hard to reach, but absolutely worth aiming for. This entire presentation is based on Spacelift's 2025 research on infrastructure automation. We wanted to deeply understand this paradox, why some teams struggle to scale safely, while others thrive under pressure. So we surveyed hundreds of leaders and decision makers to get a full picture of the automation landscape today and to uncover the practices that lead to maturity and success. There were 3 big reasons we launched this study. First, we wanted to understand where the industry really stands today, what's working and what's not. Second, we wanted to offer a clear roadmap for teams to grow in maturity. And third, we wanted to provide a framework, one that teams can actually use to measure where they are and where they're headed. because speed and control aren't just abstract ideas, they're measurable and they're coachable. Our research was based on insights from over 400 infrastructure decision makers and influencers across a wide range of industries. Nearly half came from software and SaaS companies, but we also included leaders in finance, retail, logistics, manufacturing, and more. This mix gave us a balanced view, covering everything from cloud-native startups to heavily regulated enterprises, and that diversity helped surface patterns that apply broadly. The data was sobering. More than 50% of companies take over a week just to push infrastructure changes into production, and 43% need to rerun those deployments at least 4 times. That's a lot of wasted time, friction, and risk. It shows that even though automation tools are everywhere, the outcomes aren't where they should be. Without the right controls, teams end up with fragile systems that fail silently or loudly. Here's the punchline. 45% of teams think they're excelling at infrastructure automation, but only 14% actually are, based on measurable outcomes. That's a pretty big delta, and it tells us that many teams are flying blind. Without a clear framework for evaluating maturity, it's easy to overestimate how far along you really are. This disconnect stems from what we call the speed control paradox. Teams feel pressured to move fast, especially when shipping features or scaling infra. But that speed often comes at the cost of reliability, compliance, and governance. Others, especially in regulated industries, swing the other way. Tight controls but low velocity. Either way, it's a hard balance to get right. Our survey results show a clear pattern. High maturity teams, those we classify as leaders, tend to prioritize control, building trust and reliability into their pipelines. Early stage companies, on the other hand, focus more on speed, often cutting corners to move faster. But ironically, it's the ones that prioritize control who end up shipping more consistently and recovering faster. Teams that do get the balance right unlock serious performance gains. They're twice as likely to get deployments right on the first try, 3 times more likely to provision infra in under 4 hours, and 5 times more likely to ship to production daily or even multiple times a day. So yes, it takes work to master the paradox, but the results speak for themselves. We've distilled our findings into 4 maturity levels: experimenters, adopters, optimizers, and leaders. Experimenters are just getting started. Maybe they've adopted Terraform or some basic scripts. Adopters are moving forward, but still struggle with consistency and governance. Optimizers have more structure and efficiency, but often lack scalability or compliance coverage. And leaders? They've built automation into every layer, from security to delivery, and they do it at scale. What makes a leader stand out? They've built automation not just for speed, but for resilience. They automate across the full lifecycle from day 1 provisioning to day 2 operations. Their pipelines are secure, observable, and policy-driven, and they enable teams to deliver safely without bottlenecks. Leaders don't stop at CI/CD. They automate across every pipeline, across every team. From initial provisioning to patching, scaling, and decommissioning, automation is the norm, not the exception. This is what allows them to move faster with less manual work and also reduces incidents and inconsistencies over time. Leaders don't just talk about platform engineering, they operationalize it. They centralize ownership of infrastructure, align on patterns, and make it easier for developers to self-serve safely. This alignment helps reduce friction, improve consistency, and make onboarding much smoother. When it comes to security, who do you think is more proactive, leaders or experimenters? We asked this in our research, and the difference was striking. Leaders are 6 times more likely to automate security scanning and embed checks into the pipeline. They don't treat security as a separate step. They build it in from day 1. That's what allows them to scale safely, even under heavy delivery pressure. Here's a quick checklist of what makes leaders successful. They implement developer self-service, which speeds up delivery while preserving guardrails. They integrate security and compliance early. They invest in platform teams. They optimize for cost. And they avoid siloed automation, meaning they manage day one and day two operations centrally and cohesively. This holistic mindset is what separates teams that scale well from those that stall out. So the big question is, where is your team on this journey? Are you just getting started or already leading the way? We've built a self-assessment to help you benchmark your maturity and identify clear next steps. It's a great place to start if you want to build toward that balance of speed and control. Thanks so much for joining today. At Spacelift, we're focused on helping DevOps teams automate safely, scale with confidence, and master that speed control balance. If this talk resonated with you, or if you're thinking about how to level up your infrastructure strategy, we'd love to talk.